As the al-Qaeda leader did not expect President George W. Bush to retaliate the way he did. And according to this associate, it all stems from the way President Bush's predecessor handled terrorism. Instead, this aide says bin Laden was anticipating the same weak reaction to terrorism that we saw throughout the Clinton administration. Now listen to this.
What happened after the 11th of September, it's beyond their imagination. I am 100% sure they haven't a clue about what's going to happen. They said this time, maybe they're going to launch 200 cruise missiles.
And joining me now with reaction to this 9/11 shocker is the host of War Stories right here on the Fox News Channel, the one and only Colonel Oliver North. How are you? Now,
good to be back.
He claims that he was there during the planning of the 9/11 attack, and that bin Laden's reaction was they're never going to hit us back because of the way Clinton responded, or didn't respond.
Bill Clinton is a child of the 60s. 35 years ago tonight, the last helicopters were leaving the roof of the American embassy in Saigon. So Bill Clinton got what he wanted from that exchange. Of course, he was an anti-war resistor back in the 60s. And I don't think anybody should have expected Bill Clinton to respond any differently than what he did after embassies are blown up, where ships are hit, all the rest of the things that occurred in the Clinton administration. The bottom line of it is George W. Bush was not cut from the same bolt of cloth as William Jefferson Blythe Clinton, and we ought to be thankful for it.
Well, but what he's saying, and the way I'm interpreting this, that after the embassy bombings in Kenya, Tanzania, the Khobar Towers, the USS Cole, the first Trade Center bombing, is that they were at war with us. America's not going to respond. So they anticipated
the same kind of response.
The same kind of non-response.
And what clearly Osama bin Laden did not register with him, and it just shows his lack of understanding of the American people. Less so the presidency, but the American people could not tolerate something like what happened on 9/11/01 in this country. And the end result of that has been, I think, a stunner for almost everybody involved in the al-Qaeda leadership, whether it's in the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan or whether it was in Iraq. They never expected the Americans to fight back. We do fight back.
All right, but now move to where we are today, because the conclusion of the 9/11 Commission report, they're at war with us, we're not at war with them. So bin Laden came to what was an obvious conclusion based on events as they were unfolding. Now, we just heard last week our own Secretary of Defense tell this country they think that Iran, that tiny country that President Obama was talking about, they don't represent a threat, they don't pose a threat, we can negotiate without preconditions. Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon, perhaps a ballistic missile, and a weapon that can hit the United States within 5 years. And this very day, President Obama is saying the sanctions that they were planning, they're not going to follow through on.
And furthermore, whatever Obama was planning in terms of sanctions on Iran were not going to be effective anyway. There's only one kind of sanction that would work, and that is if the president issues an executive order. He's got them, by the way. There's a book called the PADs, the Presidential Emergency Action Documents. I know because I used to work there. Mm-hmm. One of those documents allows the president by executive order in time of crisis, when America's national security is threatened, to embargo any company that cooperates with an enemy. And so, for example, if the president really wanted sanctions to work, he could say to anybody in the world, if you do business with the Iranian government, you cannot do business in America. And everything would stop. The Germans, who are selling them all the equipment that they need, the Swiss, the French, the Chinese,
the Russians,
all would say, wait a minute, we're not going to be banned from doing business in America. We're going to stop doing business with Iran. That's what it's going to take, Sean. Waiting for the United Nations to do something has been totally ineffective.
All right. Now, what about our relationship with Israel? The snubbing of Netanyahu, the criticisms. You know, it seems, somebody said it, and I don't remember who, and I'm quoting somebody, so forgive me, but, you know, it seems that Obama is more upset about the building of homes and settlements in Israel than the building of the bomb in Iran. And now we have alienated our closest ally, and there's been talk, Brzezinski and others, saying that if the Israelis decide to take out the nuclear facilities and they go over Iraqi airspace, American jets may confront our closest ally and shoot him out of the sky?
Here's another touch of reality out there. The Israelis can't hit those targets in Iran without American acquiescence. Everybody knows that, and the Iranians know it. In other words, you're going to have to overfly either some NATO-controlled airspace or refuel at a NATO or U.S.-controlled base somewhere like Iraq or Afghanistan.
So Obama can stop the Israelis if he wants to, if they deem it in their national security interest?
The Israeli Air Force is not going to make a one-way trip to Iran. I mean, that's a fact. The Israeli Air Force knows that they can't refuel over hostile territory.
Do you really believe Barack Obama would give the order that if the Israelis... You think he would let him do it?
No, I think what Barack Obama is obviously planning to do is to somehow deal with a nuclear-armed Iran. That's what Bob Gates' memo of 2 weeks ago
But he's saying that, but the Israelis are not prepared to deal with that.
And because they know target number one is Tel Aviv. They know, which is one of the reasons why Israel is so afraid of this.
Here's my question, though. If the Israelis decide it's in their national interest, because how many times can you threaten to wipe them off the map before you act? And they decide they're going to act, what will this president do?
Nothing. In other words, but by doing nothing, he says you cannot refuel at a U.S.-controlled base or a NATO base. And that means the Israelis cannot attack because the Israelis are not going to make a one-way trip. They're not going to fly over Iran and then go back over the Persian Gulf and ditch their airplanes.
Will they risk flying over Iraq and risk confrontation with American?
Well, if the Israelis see something being put on the end of a Shabazz missile that can reach Tel Aviv, the Israelis have no choice but to act because they know that they're target number one.
All right, Colonel, good to see you.
Good to be back.
All right. And time now to check in.